Fiancé's obsessed admirer intruded on our wedding by fabricating an invitation, forcing us to sternly set boundaries and block her. My name is Anna, and I'm engaged to Mike, who's 34. There's this woman, Jen, who's in her early 30s and on the very edges of our larger friend group. Over the years, before I was around, Jen already had a reputation for causing drama, and even now, she continues to hover on the periphery of our social circle for reasons that aren't great. Still, I mostly knew her as an acquaintance, nothing more. Jen and her boyfriend have gotten pretty serious, they're moving in together. Despite this, she's made no secret that she has a crush on Mike. Honestly, it got bizarre for a while. She was texting him relentlessly, on the worst day, over 50 messages. She tried to flirt with him in person, but Mike wasn't remotely interested. He responded to only the bare minimum, always keeping it cool and distant, telling her he was busy with work. Mike refused any one-on-one meetups she proposed, like drinks after work. He showed me the entire message thread because he saw the red flags and didn't want a single doubt to linger about how he handled her. Even before things got this weird, she tried orchestrating double date nights with us, but we'd conveniently find reasons to decline. The one time we agreed, she acted out. She put on this gross PDA spectacle with her partner in the restaurant and then tried to drag the whole conversation toward sex, even with kids seated at the next table. It made everyone, her own boyfriend included, deeply uncomfortable, and we all told her as much. She just pouted, said we weren't any fun, and shrugged it off as if the drinks excused it. She's also done this whole performance of wanting to be my girlfriend with Mike watching, but never once reached out to me privately or tried to develop a friendship. Let's just say, her effort to seem friendly is all for show. I have no idea what, if anything, her partner thinks of all this. Then this past weekend, I found out she's been telling people she's invited to our wedding, when she's not, never was, and will not be. She's even been asking mutual friends about our gift registry. We don't even have one. Our ceremony is purposely tiny, less than 10 people, and the reception is invite only, less than 50 guests, because of costs and the venue's size. Even if we did a massive wedding, though, she would not have made the cut. Mike and I don't consider her a friend. She acted hurt when she learned she wasn't invited to Mike's stag party, which was literally just a board game night. She wasn't even remotely considered for an invite. She also complained about being left out of my shower or bachelorette party. I didn't have a shower. We already own a home, and in no world would I invite her to anything, not after how disrespectful she's been. 2 different friends let us know Jen was spinning stories about being invited. One even tried to get a straight answer from her, but Jen just danced around their questions. My best guess? She wants to believe she and Mike are real friends and is hurt, but I suspect she's really trying to find out the ceremony details and party location. Thankfully, nobody we invited is likely to spill anything to her, but she does have a way of worming details out of people sometimes. I realize that it's time to be direct. Mike and I will send her a message, something clear, over text, stating she's not invited, that her behavior is unacceptable, and that's that. No apologizing or sugarcoating it. After that, we'll block her on everything. If she tries to show up or stir things up more, we'll take further action with the hosts or the venues, but I doubt it'll come to that. It's completely absurd and unhinged that it's come to this. Should I have to spend an ounce of energy on a grown woman acting like this? No, but here we are. I feel sorry for her, she clearly needs help. For the record, we haven't hung out anywhere near her since those early disasters in 2024. If we do see her, it's just because of mutual events like birthdays, but that's it. She's tried to push more double dates, and we just always say no. Mike and I hadn't blocked her before because we hoped ignoring her would make her lose interest, but it didn't. Obviously, that was wishful thinking. Luckily, Mike is just as ready to be firm. He's leading the conversation, with me beside him, present, but not getting pulled into any drama. I don't care how Jen tries to label me. She'll call me jealous or territorial, but none of our friends buy into her weird narrative. It's obvious to everyone who the real problem is, and if Jen starts painting me as the villain, so be it. My peace of mind isn't up for debate. If anyone in our group hears her talking about an invite, they have our blessing to clear things up for her. She is not, and never was, invited. If she wants drama, she can find it elsewhere. Mike and I have a wedding to celebrate, and no patience for games. Update 1. A while back, I found myself dealing with an odd and uncomfortable situation. I had to address the fact that my soon-to-be husband's acquaintance, Jen, early 30s, seemed to believe she was invited to our wedding, even though she was never on any guest list, and never would be. The backdrop? Jen has been visibly interested in Mike, my fiancé, 34, even though she's in a committed relationship herself. Mike picked up on it right away, but tried to handle it gently. He thought if he just kept things strictly polite and never reciprocated, she'd get the message and let the infatuation pass harmlessly. But that didn't happen. Instead of moving on, Jen began telling our mutual friends this elaborate, made-up tale about having received a wedding invite from us. She even went so far as to gripe about not being included in the bachelor or bachelorette pre-wedding parties, despite never having been friends with either of us in the first place. At first, we weren't really worried that she'd try to actually crash the wedding, still months away, but it started to become clear we might be underestimating things. We took it seriously. Our venue is just a friend's lovely backyard, but our friend, the owner, understood our concerns and got involved. He beefed up security with voice and motion activated cameras that alert him the moment anyone sets foot at the bottom of the driveway. Given how the place is laid out, there isn't another way in. Jen wouldn't even make it to the front door before being spotted. The big conversation with Jen happened just as chaos struck elsewhere. That morning, a close friend had tripped on her stairs and broken her wrist. Her husband was out of town, so I drove her to the ER. As I sat in the waiting room, Mike added me as a third to the text conversation with Jen so I could follow along when I was able. Mike started off gently, trying to figure out if there'd just been some odd workplace rumor or miscommunication. He brought up the confusion the Jen's been invited rumor was causing. I honestly expected her to object to my presence, or at least notice, but she said nothing, only pretending to be concerned about the stress these rumors were causing. Mike explained that more than one friend mentioned Jen had claimed to have been invited to our wedding, and that she was upset about being left out of our celebrations. Jen instantly denied everything. She insisted she hadn't even spoken to one of those friends, and that maybe the other comment was just a misunderstanding. According to her, she understood she hadn't been invited to our wedding. She figured maybe it was for budget reasons, and she certainly never expected to be at any pre-wedding parties, adding that, in her opinion, it would be weird for a girl to attend an all-male bachelor party anyway, since she assumed it would involve strip clubs or sex workers. For the record, Mike is sex positive but absolutely not into that scene. His bachelor party is literally a board game night. Instead of correcting her on the party details, Mike kept stakes low and just said the guest list was small, and that his bachelor plans had nothing to do with gender or sex work. Then, when Jen kept protesting that she hadn't said those things about the invite, Mike calmly showed her screenshots of the conversations with the two people who'd brought this to us in the first place. Both had given us permission for that. Suddenly, Jen's attitude whiplashed. She insisted on taking things to a video call. Mike declined. She started typing in all caps, with a barrage of exclamation points, accusing the others of lying and causing drama, and lamenting that no one in the group would ever give her a chance to move on from the past, some social drama from 10 years back. She said people were targeting her for being neurodivergent. Mike didn't engage on the drama. He told her he was sorry she felt that way, but emphasized 2 points. First, to be absolutely clear, there was no wedding invitation, and there never would be. Second, while he genuinely wished her the best, he didn't think pursuing even a friendship made sense, not just because of the unreciprocated romantic interest he felt from her, but also because her idea of friendship veered into awkward, inappropriately personal territory given that they barely knew each other. Plus, he's engaged, and she has a long-term partner. Jen never apologized or owned up to the fact that her flirting made things uncomfortable and weird. She steered everything back to her, railing about how nobody ever lets her grow beyond her mistakes or gives her credit for improvements, and how she's bullied because she's neurodivergent. Before Mike could wrap things up, she ended the conversation herself by blocking him. But it didn't end there. A few days later, Mike got a handful of messages from Jen's partner. The man was clearly upset and worried, believing from what he'd heard that Jen was being attacked and bullied by our group over old mistakes. He was obviously trying to defend her, and since he wasn't around for those old events, he was acting on what Jen must have told him. Mike thanked him for reaching out, said he completely understood wanting to defend Jen, and asked what exactly her boyfriend thought was happening. The boyfriend repeated some version of Jen's story, that Mike was Jen's good friend and was now letting the group exclude her and bully her because of her autism and her supposedly bad past, and that Jen had been uninvited just because her friend's fiancé, was jealous. Mike gently but firmly set him straight. He explained that he'd never considered Jen more than a casual acquaintance, that he hadn't even known her during those old social dramas, and that whatever opinions he had of Jen were based only on her recent actions. He made it very clear that she had never been invited to our wedding, so there hadn't been any uninviting. And then, carefully, he said that Jen had crossed lines in her communication with him, flirty texts, emojis, and even asking to meet up with him one-on-one. He offered to share those messages with her partner if he wanted proof. The conversations after that were awkward, but the facts were clear. Now, with security measures in place and everything out in the open, I think the situation is finally under control. But it still baffles me just how wild some people's stories can become. Mike and I were at home one evening when Jen's partner reached out unexpectedly. He wanted to see some of the stuff we'd talked about, and Mike, taking the honest route, showed him some of the most obviously troubling things. After that, the partner just thanked Mike for sharing, fell utterly silent, and let the conversation die. We haven't heard from him since. My guess is our version of events must have been a far cry from what Jen had told him, and he finally realized something was off. Jen, meanwhile, has been posting these vague, dramatic things on social media about feeling betrayed and misunderstood, but Mike has completely ignored it. He hasn't responded or risen to the bait at all. He hasn't blocked her on Instagram, either. He wants to keep an eye on things for a little while, but honestly, most of her content has shifted back to the usual, a constant stream of selfies. About a month after all that, we ran into her at a mutual friend's birthday party. The atmosphere bristled when she saw us. She said nothing, just flinched ever so slightly and looked extremely unhappy. We deliberately kept our distance and remained cordial and formal. There was no drama, no public scene, just an unmistakable frost in the air. As for her partner? Nowhere in sight. She showed up solo that night, and we didn't ask. We had no intention of digging for that mess. The story behind all this mess goes back a while, and without it, none of this makes sense. A woman in our social circle started dating a guy named Dean nearly a year back. Things go well for a while, but she lands a job in another state, and neither of them wants to attempt the nightmare of a long-distance relationship. She moves, they break up, amicably enough. Dean, meanwhile, forges his own friendships within our group, slowly becoming a fixture himself. Soon after, Dean meets Jen at a bar, and they hit it off. That's when Jen enters the picture, and she too gets woven into the fabric of our social circle. Dean is in the military, and inevitably, he gets assigned overseas. He and Jen give long distance a try, but predictably, it proves too much, they break up. Jen stays. She sticks around and remains friends with many people in the group. The real trouble starts after Jen and Dean split. There's a girls' trip, and everyone is pretty deep into their drinks. The topic shifts to the wildest things people are into when it comes to sex. When it's Jen's turn, she opens up and admits something bizarre. She and Dean used to pick up random women at bars. Jen would then hook up with these women while Dean watched, often pretending he'd left to go to bed. The kicker? They never told the woman what was really happening. According to Jen, this game happened more than once. That admission landed like a bomb. Several women exploded in anger, calling out how deeply messed up and predatory the whole thing was. Jen, for her part, sat there completely surprised, not understanding why everyone was furious, genuinely bewildered by the backlash. The fallout was instantly seismic. A bunch of people cut ties with Jen right then and there, and she was effectively exiled from the group. Heartbroken and shocked, Jen apologized profusely, yet never seemed to grasp why what she'd done was so twisted. Eventually, a few people told her, bluntly, that if she wanted any chance of re-entering the group, she'd need to get into therapy and figure out why her behavior was unacceptable. Allegedly, she took their advice. She went to therapy, claimed to see the error of her ways, made her apologies, and seemed to start improving. That's the only reason a few folks from the group let her be invited to things at all. Somewhere in all this, Jen apparently was diagnosed with autism, and that complicated people's feelings about the whole situation. Even so, for a significant chunk of the group, including me, the effort didn't erase what happened. Some people just stopped including her. Interactions these days are formal, polite but remote. No one's outright rude, but she's rarely invited anywhere, and even those who tolerate her keep her at arm's length. I suspect the general idea is that she'll eventually understand she's not welcome at most gatherings and quietly fade out, but Jen still seems surprised and hurt that some of us just can't look past it. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and honestly, I thought this whole situation with Jen was finally behind us. I was wrong. The wedding went off without a hitch, no sign of Jen anywhere, and the security cameras at our friend's house stayed quiet. Mike and I had the most beautiful day, and for a few blissful weeks afterward, I genuinely believed we could move on with our lives. Then things got weird again, but in a completely different way. About 6 weeks after the wedding, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Dean. Yes, that Dean, Jen's military ex who'd been overseas. Apparently, he'd been back stateside for a month but hadn't told anyone in our friend group yet. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, which struck me as odd since we'd always gotten along fine. "Hey Anna, congratulations on the wedding," he said, but something in his tone felt off. I heard about everything that happened with Jen. I thanked him and was about to move on when he stopped me. "Look, I know this is awkward, but there's something you should probably know. Jen's been calling me nonstop since I got back. She's been telling me some pretty wild stories about you and Mike." My stomach dropped. I asked him what kind of stories. Dean looked around nervously before continuing. "She's claiming that Mike has been secretly messaging her, that he's having second thoughts about the marriage, and that you're controlling and manipulative. She even showed me some screenshots of text conversations allegedly between her and Mike." I felt my face go hot. "Dean, Mike blocked her months ago." "Whatever she showed you, I know," he interrupted. "That's why I'm telling you. The screenshots looked fake as hell. The font was wrong, and some of the timestamps didn't make sense. But Anna, she seemed to really believe what she was saying. It was unsettling." Dean went on to explain that Jen had been begging him to help her save Mike from making a huge mistake. She'd apparently convinced herself that our entire marriage was some kind of rebound reaction to her rejection, and that Mike was just too proud or scared to admit he had feelings for her. She kept saying things like he married her so quickly after our conversation and he's trying to prove something to himself, Dean said. I tried to tell her she was way off base, but she wouldn't hear it. She actually asked me to reach out to Mike on her behalf. I thanked Dean for telling me and immediately called Mike. When I explained what Dean had said, Mike went completely silent for a long moment. "Anna," he finally said, his voice tight, "I need to show you something when I get home." That evening, Mike sat me down with his laptop. "I didn't want to worry you, but I've been getting friend requests and messages from fake accounts for the past few weeks. I thought it was just random spam until now." He showed me multiple Instagram and Facebook accounts, all with generic names and stock photo profile pictures, that had been trying to contact him. The messages were flirty and personal, clearly written by someone who knew details about our lives that only someone from our friend group would know. Look at this one, Mike said, clicking on a message from an account called Sarah_M_2024. The message read, "Hey Mike. Heard through the grapevine that married life isn't quite what you expected. If you ever want to talk to someone who really gets you, I'm here. Some of us never got our real chance, you know?" XOXO. Another account, Jenny_fitness_girl, had sent, "Marriage is such a big adjustment. Hope you're not feeling trapped. Remember, it's never too late to choose happiness over settling." There were at least 8 different fake accounts, all with slightly different approaches but the same underlying message. Mike had blocked each one as they appeared, but they kept coming. "The really creepy part," Mike said, "is that whoever's behind these knows things about my work schedule, knows I've been stressed about the promotion process, even knows about the argument we had last week about where to spend Christmas." That's when it hit me. Those details weren't things Jen could have known unless someone was feeding them to her. Someone in our friend group was giving her information about our marriage. We started thinking back through recent conversations, trying to figure out who might be the leak. The Christmas argument had only been mentioned to 3 people: my sister, Mike's best friend Tom, and our mutual friend Casey, who had been one of the people who originally told us about Jen claiming to be invited to the wedding. The next day, Mike decided to test our theory. He told Tom a completely made-up story about us having a big fight over wanting kids, told Casey a fake story about me being jealous of his female coworkers, and told my sister, who we trusted completely, the truth about what we were doing. Within a week, Mike received a message from a new fake account: "Kids are such a huge decision. Don't let anyone pressure you into something you're not ready for. You deserve someone who wants the same future you do." Casey was our leak. When we confronted her, Casey broke down crying. Apparently, Jen had been manipulating her for months, claiming that she was worried about Mike and just wanted to make sure he was happy. Jen had convinced Casey that feeding her information was actually helping, that if Mike was truly unhappy, wouldn't it be better for everyone if that came out sooner rather than later? She made it sound like she was being a good friend. Casey sobbed. She said she could tell Mike was putting on a brave face but that he'd confided in her before about having doubts. I thought maybe I was helping prevent him from making a mistake he'd regret forever. Casey admitted that Jen had been incredibly persuasive, playing on Casey's own insecurities about her recent divorce and her general distrust of rushed marriages. Jen had painted herself as someone who truly cared about Mike's well-being and was concerned that I was isolating him from his friends. The manipulation was honestly masterful in its subtlety. Jen never directly asked Casey to spy on us or betray our trust. Instead, she'd express concern and ask innocent-seeming questions that Casey, thinking she was being a caring friend, would answer. Mike and I are both furious with Casey, but we're also trying to understand that she was manipulated too. We've agreed to take a break from the friendship while we figure out if we can ever trust her again. As for Jen, we've now blocked all the fake accounts we can find and have reported the harassment to the platforms. We're also considering involving law enforcement if it escalates further, since creating fake profiles to harass someone crosses legal lines in our state. The most unsettling part is realizing how far Jen was willing to go to insert herself into our marriage. She wasn't just hoping we'd fail, she was actively trying to make us fail. The fake profiles, the manipulation of our friends, the elaborate fantasy she'd constructed about Mike's feelings for her. It goes so far beyond what I thought anyone was capable of. I keep wondering what would have happened if Dean hadn't come back, or if we hadn't figured out the connection between the fake accounts and our friend group. How long would this have gone on? How much damage could she have done to our marriage if we hadn't caught it? Mike and I are doing fine. If anything, this whole situation has made us stronger and more committed to protecting our relationship. But I'd be lying if I said it hasn't shaken my faith in our friend group. If Casey could be manipulated so easily, who else might Jen have gotten to? For now, we're keeping our circle small and being very careful about what we share and with whom. It's sad that it's come to this, but apparently, that's what happens when someone can't accept that no means no. Update 3. I genuinely thought the fake social media accounts were the end of it. Mike and I had been extra cautious about what we shared and with whom. Casey was out of our lives, and we hadn't heard anything about Jen in over 2 months. We were finally starting to relax. Then last week happened, and I'm still processing it all. It started when Mike came home from work looking absolutely shell-shocked. He sat down at our kitchen table without even taking off his jacket and just stared at me for a long moment before speaking. "Anna, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm while I do." My heart immediately started racing, but I nodded. HR called me into a meeting today. Someone filed a complaint against me. Before I could even ask who, Mike continued. They wouldn't tell me who made the complaint initially, but they said someone reported that I've been sexually harassing them through text messages and that when they tried to set boundaries, I retaliated by having my wife harass them on social media. I felt like the room was spinning. What? That's insane. You haven't. The person provided screenshots, Mike interrupted. Dozens of them. Text messages that look like they're from my phone number, saying inappropriate things, asking this person to meet up, even some that reference our marriage and how unsatisfying it is. It took me a second to connect the dots, but when I did, I felt sick. Jen. Mike nodded grimly. HR showed me a few of the messages. They're good fakes, better than the social media ones. They have my phone number, they reference conversations we've actually had, and they're written in a way that sounds like me. But Anna, I swear to you, I never sent any of those messages. The HR investigation was apparently quite thorough. They'd already spoken to several of Mike's coworkers, asking about his behavior and whether anyone had noticed anything inappropriate. The complaint also included allegations that I had been stalking and intimidating Jen online, which presumably referred to us blocking the fake accounts and reporting them. Mike's boss, thankfully, knows his character well and seemed skeptical of the allegations from the start. But corporate policy required a full investigation regardless. Mike was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. That evening, we sat down and tried to figure out how Jen could have pulled this off. The fake text messages were incredibly sophisticated. They included details about Mike's work projects, his schedule, even inside jokes from our marriage that she couldn't have known unless someone was still feeding her information. Wait, I said suddenly. Show me one of the screenshots again. Mike pulled up the photo HR had shared with him on his phone. As I studied the message thread, something caught my eye. Mike, look at the timestamp on this one. It says you sent a message at 2:47 a.m. last Tuesday. But you were in bed next to me at 2:47 a.m. last Tuesday. I remember because the neighbor's dog was barking and woke us both up. We started going through our calendars and my photos, cross-referencing the timestamps on the fake messages with our actual whereabouts. In several cases, the messages were sent when Mike was provably somewhere else, in meetings with multiple witnesses, at dinner with me, and documented in my Instagram posts, even once when he was on a plane with no Wi-Fi. But here's where it gets really twisted. We realized that some of the personal details in the messages could have only come from one source. Casey. Despite agreeing to take a break from our friendship, Casey had apparently been in contact with Jen this entire time. The messages referenced the fight Mike and I had about his mother visiting for Christmas, a fight that only Casey knew about from before we discovered she was leaking information. When we confronted Casey again, the truth came out. She'd never actually stopped talking to Jen. In fact, after we'd cut her off, Casey had become even more convinced that we were the problem. Jen had spent months convincing Casey that we were controlling and manipulative, that we'd unfairly made Jen a scapegoat, and that Mike was probably emotionally abusive based on how quickly he'd moved on from Jen's friendship. She was so convincing, Casey cried when we showed up at her apartment. She said Mike was probably love-bombing you to cover up his guilt about leading her on. She said the way you two attacked her together was a classic sign of an abusive relationship. Casey admitted that she'd been giving Jen updates on our marriage for months, even after we'd confronted her the first time. She'd told Jen about Mike's work stress, about my concerns that we'd moved too fast, about our financial worries, about arguments we'd had, everything. But the most shocking revelation was still coming. Casey, I said carefully, how did Jen get Mike's actual phone number to make those fake messages look so convincing? Casey went pale. What do you mean? The HR complaint includes messages that appear to come from Mike's real phone number. How would Jen know his number? I might have. It turns out Casey hadn't just been sharing information. She'd also given Jen Mike's phone number, his work email, and even some photos from my social media that I'd shared privately in our group chat. Jen had been using this information to make her harassment campaign look more credible. The final piece fell into place when Casey admitted that Jen had asked her to create some of the fake social media accounts we'd been blocking. Casey had made 3 of them, thinking she was helping Jen reach out to Mike because she was worried about his well-being. Mike and I immediately took all of this information to his HR department. The evidence that the messages were fabricated, combined with the proof of Jen's pattern of harassment and Casey's admission that she'd helped create fake accounts, was enough for the company to dismiss the complaint entirely. Mike was reinstated the next day. But we're not done yet. We filed a police report for harassment and identity theft. Jen created fake messages that appeared to come from Mike's phone number and used them to try to destroy his career. That's a crime. We've also consulted with a lawyer about a restraining order and potentially a civil suit. Casey is facing consequences at her own job too. She'd been using her work computer to access some of the fake accounts and communicate with Jen, which violated her company's IT policies. When we provided evidence of her involvement to the police, it came out that she'd also forwarded some of Mike's work-related messages that I'd mentioned to her in conversation, messages that contained proprietary information. Her company is not happy. The most disturbing part of all this is realizing how far Jen was willing to go, and how easily she manipulated Casey into helping her. Casey genuinely believed she was protecting Mike from an unhealthy marriage and helping a friend who was being bullied. The manipulation was so subtle and effective that Casey never saw herself as participating in harassment. Mike and I are stronger than ever, but this experience has been a harsh lesson in how dangerous it can be when someone can't accept rejection. Jen didn't just refuse to take no for an answer, she actively tried to destroy Mike's career and our marriage when she realized she couldn't manipulate her way back into our lives. The scariest part? If Dean hadn't come back and tipped us off to the fake social media accounts, we might never have connected the dots. Jen could have succeeded in getting Mike fired, and we might have blamed the stress on each other instead of realizing we were being systematically sabotaged. We're still waiting to hear back from the police about potential charges, but our lawyer seems optimistic that we have a strong case. In the meantime, we're keeping detailed records of everything and being extra careful about our digital security. I never imagined that having to uninvite someone who was never invited in the first place would lead to all this. But I'm grateful we caught it when we did, and I'm grateful that Mike and I were able to weather it together. Some people really can't handle being told no.